My name's Erika. I form part of the Computime ComplyRadar team here. I'm the head of product in the ComplyRadar division. And a bit of an idea about who we are. So the company has been around for over 40 years at this point in time, and as a company, we're over 110 employees, and the division I form part of is the FinTech division. We have two main brands. We have a BRS analytics platform, which form part of compliance solutions, and then we have our ComplyRadar product, which leads related to transaction monitoring, which I'll be focusing on today as part of this demo. So what does ComplyRadar do? So in essence, ComplyRadar is a live transaction monitoring tool. The idea is to get a bit of a balance between the very stringent regulations that come about when it comes to anti-money laundering, when it comes to fraud detection, when it comes to responsible gaming. But of course, at the end of the day, you want to ensure that you're not really limiting your players or your customers. So it is very important to have that balance in a solution to ensure that you are adhering to things as much as possible, but with the right balance in mind. So, a bit of a summary, a bit of an idea of what the ComplyRadar platform leads to, what it offers. So we have an easy-to-use collaborative web application. The idea is that the solution is normally developed, is normally implemented within your own infrastructure, within your own IT cap. Why? Because you want to limit the latencies. You want to have everything under your own infrastructure. So it's usually implemented either on-prem or on your own private cloud. The solution is very highly scalable, so you can have, you can be a small operator, but you can be one of the largest platform providers in Europe, and we can still support you. So the solution is very highly scalable depending on your requirements. The solution is also, of course, using big data and AI within the application, and it supports a high availability setup as well. So that ensures that you have this resiliency whenever you need to. It's got a very adaptive and flexible engine within the solution, so it's not just a rules engine. You've got AI built into it, you've got anomaly detection, you've got fuzzy logic, which we'll be going into shortly. Of course, the solution is also multi-jurisdictional, so it is not just meant to operate in a certain jurisdiction. As operators, one would have various different jurisdictions, so the system would be there catered for and implemented depending on your own regulators' requirements, depending on where you are expanding. So the system is very highly flexible and customizable to ensure that you are complying in all the jurisdictions that you are operating in or would like to operate in. So let's start having a look at some of the features. So for example, when we're talking about live transaction monitoring, one of the key things that comes into mind is segmentation of your customers. So it's a very important aspect to make sure that your customers are not all put into one bucket. You want to perhaps segment your VIP players. You might want to segment your customers who are perhaps going near the limit of their deposit threshold. So you might want to segment your customers depending on your requirements and depending on your risk appetite as an operator. And therefore, ComplyRadar solution allows you to segment your customer as needed for the different reporting requirements. You can then, in that way, flag high jurisdictions with some high country risks. You can then monitor transactions which are dealing with high risk customers perhaps or so. You can then monitor activity matching and the configurable blacklisted, for example, so the system easily allows your compliance team to upload, say, some blacklisted terms or blacklisted operations or so, that then the system will automatically be configured such that these transactions will then be captured and flagged to your compliance team member. The system in itself has a rule engine. Why? Because at the end of the day, it is the norm that operators would already have, gaming providers would already have their own risk monitoring, their own AML tools built in, so we can easily get a list of those rules and implement them in our solution as is needed. But it is not just a rule engine, it is not just one transaction coming in and that is what is monitored. So we're looking at a whole 360 view of your customer. So here we're looking at the contextual information that we have based on your KYC platform, which would be integrated with ComplyRadar. So in this way, we are looking at transactions as they are coming in, but we are mixing and matching this information based on perhaps any screening providers that you currently operate with. And in that way, we can check the transactions and check the transactions with a pool of other transactions that the customer would have already transacted with as well. You could also have, for example, flagging of high value transactions or cumulatively over a 30-day time windows. You want to monitor, for example, the chasing losses, for example, as might be common in responsible gaming. So these are items which need to be looked at not as just in isolation with one single transaction, but you want to look at all the transactions as they are coming in, and as you are looking at that transaction in point in time, you are looking at all the previous transactions and checking how these fare or how these cumulatively basically aggregates then to certain values. Is my customer approaching their deposit limits? Or they're chasing these deposits? So in that way, have they exceeded their deposit to spend income ratio that would have been set up on their KYC at onboarding? So these are information that it is important that a rule engine caters for and not just looking at a single transaction in isolation. This in itself wraps to this whole 360 customer view. So together with the information, we are not just looking at a single transaction at one point in time, but we're getting all the information from your KYC platform. We're also doing link analysis, for example. So if you know that some players are interrelated, they are the same family, for example, we can set up rules that in that way you can monitor if these players are sort of, sending money to each other through playing on your platform. And this, of course, goes against the anti-money laundering directive. So it's important to be able to have this linked view analysis and analyze together all the transactions that are basically aggregating on your platform from these different players. Another very interesting approach that we have taken in ComplyRadar is our risk-based assessment when it comes to customers. So here we are not just classifying customers as risky and not risky. It's not just a black and white on or off solution, like true or false. So here we have a concept where usually humans might be better usually to deal with risk analysis. Why? Because people will be analyzing risk on an aggregated basis. Someone's not just classified as young or old, someone's not just classified as a high spender or not. There are levels to these decisions, and usually when a person is deciding risk, usually they would look at all of these different patterns and identify what constitutes risk. Okay, so my player is coming from this jurisdiction, okay, that's a bit risky. But suddenly they are playing with these other high-risk entities, okay, that increases my risk. So you have a risk portfolio, a risk-based assessment that is slowly, possibly growing over time. And based on that, you can take certain decisions. So for example, if you had a customer who is suddenly going on to the low rating when it comes to a risk responsible gaming aspect, you might want to at least pop up saying, listen, you've been playing for over X amount of hours. Perhaps it's a good time, there's this helpline information and that kind of thing. So you can use this information then in order to take actions, which could be automated, or else it could be a message sent back to your back office system, maybe asking one of the operators to call your customer to get another interview, for example, or get some extended due diligence at that point in time. So these are very important aspects that a risk-based approach allows you to take. And these are in fact the recommended approaches that are being encouraged across all of Europe, and not just taking a decision based on just a risk assessment from a rule engine. If transacting over 10,000, for example, then in that case that is a risky player. That is no longer the case. You have to build your customer's risk portfolio, your customer's risk assessment. Another very important aspect in ComplyRadar is this artificial intelligence and machine learning technology that has built in. So over there we have certain elements of, we've mentioned the fuzzy logic that goes into risk-based engine, which we have just discussed, risk-based customer assessment. There's also the anomaly detection, which is a very interesting element to transaction monitoring. Why? Because it takes your top 1 percentile of customers and it identifies, basically it goes through all your transactions. It has a look of what is within your customer's norm. It looks at other customers, it looks at different pools, it looks at so many different clusters of customers, and basically segments and clusters your customers such that it identifies the top 1 percentile of customers who are falling outside of the norm of your traditional way of interacting with your system. So in that case, an anomaly detection solution will allow you to pick up those transactions that would traditionally fall outside of the cracks of any traditional rule engine. So an AI model is built above and beyond the rule engine to help ensure that you're picking up this additional information, because at the end of the day, people who are trying to launder money are getting smarter and smarter every day. So it is very important, to keep abreast with your solutions to help cater for them. Another aspect of AI that we include in ComplyRadar is the criticality scoring. Why? Because once a transaction has been pushed, has been flagged into the system, you want to help ensure that your compliance team is focusing on the right transactions. So the criticality scoring, as the solution is being used, so transactions are coming in, some transactions are being flagged because they go against the rules, or they are captured by the rules and they are therefore flagged, or they are flagged by the anomaly detection, and then the team needs to do something. They create a case or so. However, before that, they are going through a list of flagged transactions. So it's good to have a system which gives you a score on how likely a transaction is to be more critical than another. So giving you this criticality scoring will allow your compliance team to help focus and identify how likely a transaction is to be suspicious than others, given the historical use of the system, and as the compliance team are going through transactions and using the system's learning over time and improving this criticality scoring accordingly. Another important element of ComplyRadar is the responsible gaming aspect. So we have increased requirements throughout all of Europe to ensure that there's harm minimization on the players. So at the end of the day, you want to be operating in an environment which is as possibly safe for users to use. As I mentioned, there are different mechanisms that one can use. So there is the identification of when a customer is starting to have these risky behaviors. So for example, chasing losses. So they are depositing, losing that money, depositing that amount again. So these are things that the transaction, that 360 contextual view can help capture and can help identify. And in that same way, start building a risk score against that customer. As I mentioned, you can, for example, use the risk scoring then to classify your customer as a low, medium, high risk. And based on that, you could either limit, for example, limit any bonuses that are issued, or you might want to limit deposits that can be done at that point in time. There might be a timeout from the system. So all these things can be implemented. It could even be like a pushback to your system. Listen, call the customer, ask them if they need any help, ask them if they need any assistance on this matter. And in that way, your trained staff would have a way and means of identifying these users who might be falling as a victim of gambling. Let's look at some of the key features here. So we're talking about, we've mentioned the rules and data segmentation. When it comes to screening services, ComplyRadar in itself does not do any screening itself. However, we can integrate with any screening service provider you already have. So as long as there's some sort of API connectivity, ComplyRadar can basically hook up onto that, and then when we need to do some screening, depending on your requirements, there's a call, and that information is picked up by the system. There's also the regulatory requirements. So for example, we can also assist with the compiling of the GoAML requirement for the financial crime unit. Another important aspect is the case management system. So I've mentioned transactions coming in, I've mentioned transactions being flagged, but apart from that, compliance team members need to do something about this. So once something is being identified as possibly requiring investigation, a case can be opened into the solution, and there any additional notes and investigative information can be logged in the solution. The system can also be configured to take, say, your manual that you normally operate when you have a specific, say, a fraud case or an RG case, and say there are 10 steps that are normally operated in. In that case, the system can be configured that as soon as that specific case type is open, all those action points are logged, and the compliance team member must put in notes and close these items, close these tasks before the case can be closed. And that ensures that your compliance team members are adhering to all the required way of operating across the compliance team, the modus operandi of the company. We've mentioned as well the risk-based approach that we take. We've also got, of course, dashboards and analysis available at your fingertips. And of course, we've discussed the AI and machine learning items of the system. So basically, ComplyRadar is, in its way, will integrate with any of your platforms. So you could be a fintech that has many different platforms, and in that way the data can be either integrated directly via API calls. You could have files being pushed at the end of the day for land-based operations, for example. So depending on your operations and on your growth, we can recommend the right way of integrating to the solution, which will sit within your own infrastructure. And then these will be going through the different layers of the solution to ensure that the right reaction is taken by the solution, the right action is pushed back as needed. So ComplyRadar, we can see it as falling right within your own ecosystem of all the different requirements that you might have within your own third-party system, within your screening services, with your core systems, and of course with any other data platform provider. ComplyRadar can act as a fulcrum in the middle to basically integrate all of this information and allow your compliance team to take their informed decisions as needed. So let's just quickly go through some of the screens of the system, just a very quick flavor of this. So we've got our dashboard, which will immediately flag, give you an overview of your flagged transactions, your true and false positives, and any transactions that are pending reviewing. This is our dashboard when it comes to the case management, when it comes to your compliance team. So here you have this bird-eye views from the management perspective in order how are the team operating, how long are cases taken to be closed, how long, which team members are performing the most. So this view really allows you to take any actions or any new staffing requirements that might be needed. We've got the personal dashboard. Of course, as a compliance team member, I might want to have a way to identify what pending tasks I have, what tasks I had scheduled last week that I still need to work on. Oh, okay, I need to call this customer. I still have these cases I need to follow up on, and these cases have not yet been assigned to someone, so I can look into taking on some of the cases myself, for example. This is the flag transactions view, which is the main screen a compliance team member would be working with in order to review the flagged transactions that are coming over time as a live transaction monitoring tool, and from here the user can view the customer's information, add any notes, kick off their screening service as well, and assign this to a specific team member in that case. And in that case, a new case management task is created accordingly. Customer screening is allowed as well into the system, as I mentioned, by integrating with any screening platform provider you might already have. And here we have a list of customers. So these would be the referential information that would be taken from your own KYC platform. But the good thing about ComplyRadar is that you can also build onto this information. So if your KYC platform doesn't have any risk score, we can take the initial score, for example, that the team would have assigned, and then we start building on that risk, as we've seen from the risk scoring platform. Customer details, we've seen what some of the information, individual corporate cases. The case details, so here to track the scheduled task, to track any information, any screening results, any cases, and any tasks that would have been created. And you can there process the information and then ultimately mark a transaction as being suspicious or not suspicious. If it is suspicious, you can then, of course, relay this information and submit it as an STR to your financial crime unit. Configuration of segments, which we've discussed, the configuration of the rules as well, and of course a backtesting sandboxed environment to ensure that if you, as a user, you have full access of the rules, you want to do any changes, you can do this in the sandbox environment and have this information, giving you some idea where the rules are taking most of the time and where not, so that you can tweak and change your rules in a safe environment before putting them onto the production environment. And some of our esteemed customers. Thank you.